Hi, this is Ken from Homebrew Audio. Here is my review of the Rode NT1 5th generation large diaphragm condenser microphone, which has a few tricks up its sleeve compared to most large diaphragm condenser mics. First, it is a hybrid mic. The earlier generations of the NT1 were standard XLR microphones, which require a separate audio interface, which then plugs into your computer, usually via USB. And the mic I'm using now, which is my everyday go-to mic, the Rode NT2A, is also a standard microphone running through a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 interface. But a new kind of mic became available in the early 2000s called USB mics. They were much cheaper and much easier to use and offered an increase in quality from the small computer mics that used to be available. Since you can just plug them into a USB port and start using them right away, they were super convenient. However, USB mics didn't really sound very good compared to these kind of microphones, and they were also super noisy. It was the trade-off for price and convenience. But in the past year or two, some USB mics started sounding really good, such that they rivaled the standard mic and recording interface combo. The Rode NT1 5th generation is a hybrid of both XLR and USB. You can use all the advantages of a standard mic, using super high quality conversion and preamps and microphone interfaces, or you can just buy the mic without an interface and use it in USB mode, and it sounds much better than you'd expect from a USB mic. The second unique thing about the NT1 5th generation is that in USB mode, it has something called 32-bit float. There is a lot of math and tech stuff that you can read about what 32-bit float technically is, but what's important is why you should care. Let me demonstrate. Here is what happens when someone overloads the mic or any of the electronics in the recording path. Maybe the singer got louder to hit a high note, or the podcast guest laughed or got excited, or maybe the levels weren't set correctly to begin with. Either way, that will look and sound like this. Holy crap, you have got to be joking. Are you serious right now? First, it sounds awful, all distorted and buzzy, but also you can see in the waveform when things have gotten too loud for the system to handle. The audio tries to spill out beyond the 0 dB limits, the loudest allowable audio in digital audio, but it can't, so it just gets cut off, leaving these squared off tops. This audio is ruined. It was damaged at the source. There is no fixing it. The digital data just isn't there. Sure, certain minor clipping can be improved with tools like declipping, but it can only do so much. It's pretty much impossible to repair data that wasn't there in the first place. Sometimes people think you can fix it just by turning it down after it's recorded. Nope. Watch what happens when I try. Sure, the waveform gets smaller, and you can bring it down into that safe zone under 0 dB, but all you get is a quieter version of ruined audio. Here's what it would sound like. Holy crap, you have got to be joking. Are you serious right now? And again, you can see this by the flat tops of the waveforms. Now along comes 32-bit float. I just switched to the 32-bit float mode with the NT1 5th generation. I'll intentionally overload it like I did before. Holy crap, you have got to be joking. Are you serious right now? As you can see, it is still possible for the audio to blast outside the safe zone under 0 dB, and at first, it will also sound distorted. But watch what happens when I reduce the waveform level by essentially turning it all down. It fixes it. First, you can see that there are no squared off waveforms. Now, take a listen to what it sounds like. Holy crap, you have got to be joking. Are you serious right now? With 32-bit float, clipped audio is not ruined. All you have to do is bring the levels back under 0 dB and it's fixed. You may have noticed I changed programs there. I was using Adobe Audition for the first part of the demo, but since 32-bit float is such a new technology, not every recording program can make use of it. The Windows version of Adobe Audition, at least as of June 2023, cannot use this tech, but Audition for Mac can. I expect that'll be fixed pretty soon. I had to switch to Reaper, which, as you saw, can use 32-bit float. And since you need to use something called an ASIO driver in Windows, you cannot use 32-bit float in the Windows version of Audacity since it can't use ASIO. But you can use 32-bit float in the Mac version of Audacity since that doesn't rely on ASIO. You can't use 32-bit float in the most common Mac recording programs, GarageBand and Logic Pro. Here's a list from Rode of common programs that 32-bit float does and does not work with. Okay, so on with the review. The most important thing about any mic is how it sounds. Answer: really good. Definitely what I'd call professional audio quality. And it's quite close to my everyday studio mic, the Rode NT2A. Also, I compared the USB mode of the NT1 to the XLR mode. The latter was through a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 interface, and they sounded really similar to me. That's pretty impressive for a USB mic. Then I compared it to another popular USB mic, the Blue Yeti, and also with the Rode NT USB mic. So we had a bunch of USB comparisons there. And then finally, with my everyday studio mic, the Rode NT2A through a Focusrite Scarlett interface. Take a listen for yourself. This is the NT1 in XLR mode. That's the standard microphone with the 3-prong input, and it's going through my Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 recording interface. Here's one of my favorite quotes. It's from Colin Powell. "There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from mistakes." And now this is the NT1, same microphone, but it's in USB mode. So it's going straight into my Windows 11 desktop via USB. Here is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Colin Powell. "There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from mistakes." This is another Rode mic. It's the Rode NT USB, so it's USB only, and we can compare the quality of the USB mode in the NT1 5th generation to the NT USB to compare USB to USB by Rode. So here we go. Here is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Colin Powell. "There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from mistakes." And this is a USB mic called the Blue Yeti, which is a very popular mic and is a very good sounding USB microphone. And I'm using this to compare with the USB mode of the NT1 and the USB mic called the Rode NT USB, just so that we can get some different USB mics in the mix. So here we go. Here is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Colin Powell. "There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from mistakes." So what else? In USB mode, you can actually apply effects using Rode software like Rode Connect. One cool thing about the Rode microphones, the USB microphones, is that they have effects on board that you can use. And I don't know how I feel about it, but let me demonstrate it here. You have to access and control these effects with software using a program like this called Rode Connect. So you see here that I have the Rode NT1 5th generation plugged in, and you also see some other things on here. One of them is that it's got this sound panel. Sometimes people doing radio shows or podcasts like to have things like this, a sad trombone or a rim shot. It's also got surprise, ambulance, meow, fireball, whatever. And so that can be fun, I guess. The other thing that's more important is the effects. If you haven't noticed already, you'll probably notice that my voice sometimes kind of gets hard to hear. It kind of drops out and gets too low. That is probably happening because of an effect in here that is under a category they call punch. Now, I'll dig into these and tell you what they mean, but you'll notice that the default is to have all of these effects on. I do not recommend recording with effects because you can always add effects later, but you can't do anything about it if you've recorded with these effects and you decide you don't want them later. So I don't think it's a great idea to use these. Mainly, I think this is for people doing live videos or live podcasts. But anyway, here's what we have. There is something called depth, which controls how deep my voice sounds. You can add depth, make your voice sound deeper. Something called sparkle, which is something that can make your voice supposedly sparkle, and something called punch, which is controlled by a compressor, and that's supposed to make your voice sound more radio-like, more punchy. You may have already noticed that my voice is dropping out sometimes, and that's because of this. So what I'm going to do is show you how all these things work. The noise gate has all these controls. The default seems to work just fine. And here's what's going on if I don't have the noise gate active. Notice that the noise got a lot louder. So it's really good at filtering out noise, but be very careful that it does not cut your voice off. So do some tests. That's one of the risks with noise gates, especially if the noise is louder in the room. It might cut off your voice if it gets too quiet. But anyway, this is the only one that I recommend you use. Let me show you the next thing. Okay, this is a compressor. This is what controls what they call punch. Now this is really easy to mess up. So if I don't know, play with the threshold and the attack and the gain and the ratio and the release and all of that stuff, it can really mess up the voice, and it can make it sound like it's pumping, like the voice is, see, I don't even know what the defaults are here. It's not easy to go back to the defaults, but it can make the voice sound weird. And it's easy to ruin your audio if you use a compressor and you have these things set incorrectly. So I highly recommend that you turn this off, and that you can do by clicking the active there. So now the compressor is turned off. The reason for a compressor is supposedly, yeah, you can sometimes add punch, make yourself sound more like a radio announcer, but also because sometimes people are loud, sometimes people are quiet, and a compressor can help even that out. Ironically, the effect of the compressor here is that it kind of does the opposite. It kind of cuts your voice off, makes it sound softer and then louder in other places. And I just recommend that you do not use this. The next thing that they have is called Big Bottom and Aural Exciter. Again, these things are on by default. I highly recommend you turn everything off so that you can hear what the mic actually sounds like, because what you're hearing is the mic through effects when this stuff is on. So anyway, what is it? What is this stuff here? Let me turn them both off. Okay, right now I think the only thing we have running is the noise gate, and that is fine. Compressor is off, and exciter is off, and big bottom is off. So big bottom, let me just turn it on while I'm talking. That should make my voice sound deeper. So that's what big bottom does. I'll turn that off. And now aural exciter enhances the higher frequencies. That's what the sparkle thing was in that front knob. I'll turn that on. And that's what my voice sounds like when it is excited, apparently. It's sparkling now, I guess. And with them both on, you get big bottom and sparkle. And this is how it sounds if you don't turn this stuff off with the software. So I highly recommend, again, that you turn this stuff off. If you want it for a live video, you can always go back in and turn it on, but otherwise I would leave this stuff off. The other thing on here is called a high pass filter, and that just cuts out the frequencies in the bass frequencies. Again, I recommend not using this, but I'll just show you what it does. Here is the 75 hertz version of it. That means it's cutting out all the low frequencies that are below 75 hertz. That might not make a big impact on how my voice sounds right now, but if I move that cutoff to 150 hertz, then you're probably able to hear more of what it's doing to my voice. It's making it sound thinner because there aren't as many low frequencies on here. Again, you can apply a high pass filter after it's recorded, so I recommend not using it. And when you're done with the effects being set where you want them, in my case, the only thing running being the noise gate, don't click advanced anymore because that will reset everything. You want to click this X up here, and now everything is applied. One other thing that is super cool with Rode USB mics is that you can use this software, Rode Connect, to connect multiple USB mics to a computer. That is something that has been virtually impossible up until now. And as far as I know, you can only do it with Rode USB mics. But that would be super handy if you're doing a podcast with multiple guests, or 2 hosts and 2 guests. You can put 4 microphones on here. So you'll notice I have the 5th generation, the NT1 5th generation plugged in here. Previously, I had the NT USB Plus plugged in here. You can have any combination, mix and match these Rode USB mics. I can have 4 5th generations, NT1 5th generations. I could have 4 NT USB Pluses. I could have 2 of one and 2 of the other. I could have one of this, one of that, and then one of the other Rode USB mics, the Mini and other things. So that is very cool and lets you use multiple USB mics in the same computer. The NT1 comes with both a shock mount and a pop filter. And that really isn't a common thing at all. The pop filter is meant to be mounted right on the shock mount. And that might work okay for you, though it's a little far away from the mic for my taste, and it doesn't let you move it closer or move it up or down or side to side. You can adjust the angle, but that's about it. As you can see, and probably hear, I have just changed over to the NT1 in XLR mode, going through my Focusrite Scarlett interface. And I'm not using the included pop filter or the included shock mount. I'm using the shock mount for my NT2A and my third-party pop filter that I always use, my Stedman one instead, which allows me full flexibility to move it around on the gooseneck stem to change the distance, adjust it up or down, etc. That about wraps it up. So what are the pros and cons? Pros. High-quality professional audio in both USB and XLR modes, and that is really the most important thing. It's hybrid, can be used as either a USB mic or standard XLR mic. Low self-noise, this thing is super quiet. Comes with both a shock mount and a pop filter, which is rare, and 32-bit freaking float. Not everyone will care, but this really is revolutionary. For a lot of people, the old way of setting levels and being careful not to overload things will still work just fine, but I think people like singers and audiobook narrators will love it, not ever having to worry about ruining audio by clipping. This only works, by the way, in USB mode. I just want you to understand that before deciding to buy the mic. In the mode that I'm in now, which is XLR, going through an interface, I would not be able to take advantage of 32-bit float. And cons. I had problems in Windows in USB mode. Couldn't get it to work in both Windows and Rode Connect. I had to add a virtual output, and sometimes it didn't work at all. Restarting the computer usually fixed that, but this was a huge pain and it wasted a lot of my time. You can't use USB mode with mobile devices. Most USB mics can be used with phones and tablets right now, but the NT1 in USB mode does not work with mobile devices. Another problem in USB mode, the mic has no headphone jack on it, like most USB mics do these days, so you can't monitor, hear your voice in the headphones while recording, with zero latency. This is a pretty significant problem. With Windows machines, I recommend getting a third-party free driver called ASIO for All. Then at least you can use record monitoring in your DAW, and this will still have a short delay though when you're trying to overdub, record to music that's already been recorded. It will be a little bit out of sync with the already recorded music. Macs have a really good audio driver, so getting that latency down to like a quarter of a second like you can with the ASIO for All driver is automatic, so there's no need for a third-party driver. Still though, not great for overdubbing when recording music. None of this is an issue though if you use the mic in XLR mode, because it'll be going through an interface, and interfaces do have headphone jacks that allow zero latency monitoring. The next con is for 32-bit float, which is possibly the best thing about this mic, at least for some people. It doesn't work with a lot of DAWs, a lot of recording software. Luckily, it does work with Reaper and Adobe Audition for the Mac, but not for Windows. Check the Rode site for a list of programs that it does and does not work with. Next, the pop filter mount for the included screen doesn't let you adjust it any closer or further away, or up and down or side to side. I'll probably just use a separate pop filter that gives me more flexibility, like I'm doing right now. So the Rode NT1 5th generation is a really good large diaphragm condenser mic, offering professional quality audio and lots of cool features. It runs for about $250, which is amazing value. For comparison, my trusty Rode, I looked down, I'm not using it right now, it's over there. My trusty Rode NT2A is $399. So if the sound quality of this is something that you want, or any of the features are something that you want, I think that $250 is money well spent.